There's two really important things here that I want to talk about. One is what we can do to help the success of the flotilla to get the aid to the people who need it. What ordinary people can do, because we can do a lot of things. Not all of us have the freedom, the courage, the tenacity, the integrity, the insanity to do what you're doing. But then the other thing is to ensure the safety of your action as well. And there's things a lot of us can do by putting pressure on various governmental bodies, media pundits, and so on and so forth to bring attention to this issue. So I'd like to talk about that with you and just first of all get your thoughts. What do you think ordinary people who work 9 to 5, who go on Twitter, see all the horrible stuff that we're all doing, who are feeling despaired, hopeless, anesthetized, their brain is starting to numb them out to the horrors, but then they're hearing what you're doing and they're feeling inspired. What can ordinary people do with limited time and resources to help this action?
Well, first of all, I totally agree with you about the action of inspiring. There is actually scheduled or planned to have more flotillas. These flotillas have been going on since 2008, and there have been at least, I think, around 7, 8, or 9 of these already, and they are planning this. This one now is an emergency flotilla because of the genocide, but this summer there's going to be one that's going to go to European ports. It won't be as probably at least for, and you wouldn't even have to go on the whole thing because it's going to go to like 20 different European ports. So that's going to need more volunteers and more funding. And so for starters, it's just easy. There's a donation button. When I sent out an email, I sent out the one called U.S. Boats to Gaza. And that's just for, there's different countries where the Americans are hardly the only ones. And one thing that I thought right off the bat, I want the world who now hates the United States, the Western and NATO, to see that we're not all that horrible as Blinken and Biden and all the rest of the warmongers. There are some people here that are against this. And so if we want more people to show that they're against it. And how do you do that? Well, you can make all the calls to your elected politicians, but then you have to try to reach other people. And you can do that through all of this alternative media that they're trying to shut down. And of course, we all got shadow banned and censored on different social media. But you know what? The good side of it is, why did they do that? Why did they censor us and shadow ban us? Well, because they're
terrified of us.
They're exactly what you just pointed to. It was, and why are they trying? They're going to censor TikTok. Why? They're doing it because it's having an impact. And so this hopelessness that people have and despair that you can't do anything, well, we have the proof right there. They wouldn't be shutting us down they wouldn't be imprisoning Assange for 12 years. If he didn't pose, if the truth did not pose a threat to their horrible agenda of war profiteering and bioweapon profiteering and all the things that they've done, if that didn't pose a threat to them, they wouldn't have to try to censor and come up with disinformation networks in order all of the trolling going on with Israel hiring people to do this. I mean, you can look at it both ways and say it's bad the way it's so horribly manipulated. But on the other hand, you can say, well, you know what? Maybe we have some power if we were just all to do more and persist out there. And, there are really smart people that say once you get shut down in one thing, you try something else and you go to another thing. But, okay, going back to common people, one of the things that I'm asking people, the people I know here, is we're going to have to try to keep posting the progress. It's not going to be a long period of time that you're going to have to follow our boat. It's going to be a quick time. But when and if we are allowed to land and unload the humanitarian food and medicine, well, of course, we want that. We want that covered. So if any news gets out about that, and let's say the best thing happens, and we got a little film of unloading the food onto the Gaza shore, unlike Biden's plan where he was parachuting the food into the ocean and landing on people, etc. But let's say we have a film of people unloading medicine and anesthesia, all these things that are so lacking. Okay. We know it. Our little group will know it. We need that to be viral. We need millions of people to realize that this is possible. And look, it's 5,500 tons that's going to be carried. And you know what? That's a drop in the bucket for what the problem is right now in Gaza. However, it's something. And, so that's one thing. So that would be the good. Now, if something bad happens, just roll with it. And I've told, my husband, he's going to try to tell everybody here if I get imprisoned, that everyone's got to call up to the politicians and say, oh, Coleen Rowley, she was on the cover of Time magazine. She was a hero. She told us the truth about 9/11. Why is Israel imprisoning her? I mean, come on, people. I know you can't be more melodramatic than that. Israel right now, there was just an Israeli doctor who has a little bit of a conscience who became a whistleblower, and he sent out information about what they actually are doing to the Palestinian prisoners. And they are all like 100 of them in a cage. They're putting diapers on them. They won't even let them go to the bathroom. They're basically torturing them, etc. And this came from an Israeli doctor who said, hey, we should stop this. This is worse than Guantanamo. And so, okay, so again, I don't want to be melodramatic, but if you're imprisoned in Israel, it's not good, and people had better really not crawl into your hole and say, oh, well, I can't do anything. There are things we can do here, and we need that information to get out. And if it even is worse, if they torpedo the boat or whatever happens, the only good to come out of something like that, the worst that can happen, is that it has to serve a purpose. And I'm going to tell you, that's the only thing that really has me tied to this now, or not backing out, I should say. It's what has me not backing out, because I hope that even if the worst happens, that people will pick up that torch and will not let this be for naught. And you saw this, of course, with the assassination of Martin Luther King. We see it even currently with the persecution and the torture of Julian Assange. We're trying to say, he's suffering, but we have to try to get whatever little good can be gained from this attempt, this horrible attempt to shut down freedom of speech and press. We have to try to get something from that, which means we've got to take it. Okay, and I just got to say, the International Court of Justice, when they decided, obviously kind of brave on their part back in January to say it's plausible genocide, our government, the U.S. government, ordered all government employees in consulates and embassies, do not say the word genocide. It's a loaded term. It has a legal meaning. Whatever you do, call it a war, call it a conflict, whatever you want to call it, but do not use the word genocide. So when this court, a few months later, said it's plausible genocide, and 2 weeks after October 7th, I painted this big red banner that says, "Stop the genocide." I knew that word, genocide, has to be, people have to know what that means. And so we went up on footbridges and get about 30,000 cars in an hour going by and honking at us, etc. So we've been doing this, saying, stop the genocide, cease fire. So going back to the notion that people, so to go against that mainstream media, the first thing you have to do is you have to use what Noam Chomsky said. You have to use the right term. The truth is they fudge the truth by using propaganda terms and false euphemisms and all these things. They bastardize the language, essentially.
Well, not
And
only
so
does the term
people-
genocide have implications in international law, but perhaps even more specifically domestic U.S. law, that many of these people who are voting to supply weapons for this could theoretically and hopefully will be brought to justice for aiding and abetting this, because they're in violation of all different types of laws, and the strategy from their point of view has been to evade calling it what it is so that they're not then legally liable. So it's a big deal when people are willing to come forward, like I know AOC just did recently, but Alex Jones did it before she did, and call this thing what it is, a genocide.
Secretary Austin, thank you for acknowledging in response to Senator Wicker that Hamas committed war crimes on October 7th and has been committing them every day since by using human shields. I want to address what the protesters raised earlier. Is Israel committing genocide in Gaza?
Senator Cotton, we don't have any evidence of genocide being created.
So that's a no. Israel's not committing genocide in Gaza.
We don't have evidence of that, to
Thank
my
you.
knowledge. Yeah.
Better than Director Burns and Director Haynes did last month at the Intelligence Committee when they dodged that question. You stand accused by those protesters of greenlighting genocide. Would you like to respond to that accusation?
What I would say, Senator Cotton, from the very beginning is that we committed to help assist Israel in defending its territory and its people by providing security assistance. And I would remind everybody that, what happened on October 7th was absolutely horrible. Numbers of Israeli citizens killed, and then a couple of hundred Israeli citizens taken hostage.
American citizens as well.
American citizens as well.
So you deny the accusation that you greenlit genocide?
I absolutely deny.
Okay. For the record, I don't think Israel's committing genocide. I don't believe you greenlit genocide either. You talked a lot with Senator Reid about Israel's responsibility to provide aid in Gaza. Why does Israel have a responsibility to provide aid to Gaza? Israel was the victim of an unprovoked, vicious attack on October 7th. Why should they provide aid to the aggressor nation? Or aggressor, Gaza's not a nation, to the aggressors on October 7th. We didn't provide aid to Germany and Japan during World War II.
What we did provide aid to and assistance to many of the countries that we've operated in recently.
But not in World War II. If you had been in George Marshall's or Dwight Eisenhower's position in World War II, would you have wanted to provide aid to Germany?
I really do believe, Senator, that if they want to create a lasting effect and in terms of stability, then I think that something needs to be done to account to help the Palestinian people.
I get that, but they're in the middle of the war. Like we believe that too after World War II. That's why we had the Marshall Plan. That's why we rebuilt Japan. But that was after the war was won, not in the middle of it. And in the meantime, like if it's not Israel's responsibility to provide aid, it's certainly not our responsibility, but we're spending our tax dollars to build this giant pier to send aid into Gaza. Who's going to accept that aid? Who's going to be at the end of the pier on the shore taking aid from American forces?
That's still being worked out, but there will be NGOs that will help to distribute that aid.
That Hamas is in charge of Gaza. When aid goes to Gaza, Hamas doesn't divert it or commandeer it or steal it. It accepts it. And anybody operating in Gaza is under the thumb of Hamas. I just think it's very ill-considered, and I don't think it's going to end very well.
This is Winston the homicidal computer with an observation of the clip you were just listening to. It's clear that Senator Tom Cotton from Arkansas is a psychopath who actually believes what he's saying here. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, on the other hand, struggles to spit out the barefaced lies and extreme absurdities he's been commissioned to parrot. If this wasn't obvious to you the first time, I suggest you rewind and listen to the clip again. Slooshy well, my delicate children. Slooshy well.
Yep. I'm a part of an amicus brief that's in a lawsuit filed by the Center for Constitutional Rights that is against actually Blinken, and it's actually naming individuals. And basically this was, part of our argument. is that, they're complicit with this now, and they have to be held liable. I don't think it's really hard to get the tipping point with this, but we try in all these different arenas, and that in lawsuits, in fact, are through the law. If we can keep a little rule of law instead of what's going on, that's whole nother avenue. But the media, the law, even if you can do nothing but hold a sign on an intersection or over some traffic, all of those things are good. And the thing is just take inspiration and know that this is possible. And again, you don't have to have the highest hopes in the world about, coming up with some utopian world. You just have to say, well, no, I can do something. I can do something to help this cause. And again, my cause is just to keep the worst from happening right now, because it is a pretty scary situation. But if we can get more people to try a little harder, I think that there's, one thing about hope, realistic hope, as opposed to these false hopes. Realistic hope based on reality is based on the fact that no one, I don't care if you're Einstein or even my old friend Daniel Ellsberg or whatever. It doesn't matter how smart you are. You cannot predict the future. And that goes for not being able to predict the worst happening or the best. No one can. And actually that's a source of actually hope for me, because I know that as much as I fear World War III and that the genocide won't stop, etc., I also know that things can change overnight. And sometimes, and this goes back to what you were saying, sometimes an idea will arise and someone will grab onto it, and all of a sudden there'll be 10 people. The experience, the example I have pretty recently where this was the case was Cindy Sheehan, whose son was killed in Iraq, and her son had just been killed about a year beforehand, and she was at the Veterans for Peace conference giving basically an ad-lib talk. She never wrote notes down. She just stood up and talked. And she said, I want to ask George Bush, what noble cause did my son die for? Because he was an idiot who said noble cause.
More than 4,400 men and women have given their lives in the war on terror. We'll pray for their families. We'll always honor their memory. The best way we can honor them is by making sure that their sacrifice was not in vain. 5 years ago tonight, I promised the American people that in this struggle ahead, we will accept no outcome but victory. Today, standing before men and women who have helped liberate a nation, I reaffirm the commitment. The battle in Iraq is noble, it is necessary, and it is just. And with your courage, the battle in Iraq will end in victory. God bless.
And she goes, I want to ask him, what noble cause? And I was sitting next to Ann Wright, was on one side of me, and another intelligence retiree was on the other side. And we looked at each other, and Ann Wright says, I'm going with her. And she goes, she said, I think I'll just go camp in his ditch by his ranch. And I'm just going to ask him, what was the noble cause? I'm going to camp outside his gate. And Ann Wright says, I'm going. She goes, I'm going to go tomorrow. And I was in the middle of this group, and I said, oh, my flight. I got a flight back tomorrow. And so I stupidly flew back to Minnesota after hearing that. And, of course, they all went the next day, and it turned into about a 2-month-long encampment. I came back here, and within couple more days, another Minnesota legislator whose 40-year-old son had been killed in Iraq. He was a captain, an officer, and he had been killed. Her name was Becky Laurie, and her son had been killed too. And I didn't know her. I'd never met her before. And I got on the phone, and I called up Becky Laurie, and I said, let's go down to camp, what was it called? What was his name of that? Crawford. I said, let's go to Crawford, Texas, and camp with Cindy Sheehan. She's already got people coming. By the time we got there, which was less than a week later, there was already about 1,000 people camping in the ditch outside of Bush's ranch. And then we got, finally, the mainstream media went from its pro-war, which had fooled 70% of the American public, into believing that Saddam Hussein was behind 9/11. They had 70% of the American public completely fooled. And it went from there all the way over to, oh, this was the stupidest thing in the world. This is wrong. It was lies and deceit. So it went in about a month. That whole thing swung from one way to the other. And you know what? I was a little part of that, camping in the ditch for a few days.
Coleen, let me ask you, why do you support Cindy Sheehan's anti-war position?
Well, I happen to be a person who spoke out publicly against the war a couple of weeks before it was started and warned that it would prove counterproductive to our efforts to combat terrorism. And if you've gone through this chain of mistakes that started with the pre-9/11 lapses, and you've seen all of these errors that have occurred since, very serious to our country's security, I don't think you can do anything except continue to speak out.
You're a Democrat running for Congress. It was reported that Republican leaders in your state were just thrilled that you had decided to align yourself with anti-war extremists. Do you think that this could affect your race for Congress?
Well, I will quickly correct the record that they are not anti-war extremists. The majority of the people I saw down in Crawford were actually veterans groups. There were military families. And
but Coleen, they do oppose the war in Iraq, do they not?
Yes, they do, but that does not make them, I guess, the term extremists. They're really, I think, reflective of mainstream America in many ways.
So having been a part of something that, and you can look throughout history, you don't even have to know it firsthand. Like your story, the same thing. You can realize that sometimes the universe aligns, the universe opens up, and there is sometimes, and you know, the Unitarians, before even Martin Luther King said, the arc of the moral universe bends towards justice. And if I have any religious faith, it's based in that understanding. And you know what? It's frustratingly slow, and you know, it's you got to go through a lot of shit to get to the arc of the moral universe, just bending towards justice. But you know what? I think it's true. I think I've glimpsed in the past what I call sometimes little instances of divine justice. And I think it happens, and I believe in it. And I'm going to, you know, I think all the people on our little flotilla somewhere in their subconscious have the same understanding of the way things work. And yeah, you can try, and sometimes things don't work, but every once in a while, yes, it works, and you see some progress made.
I must confess, my friends, the road ahead will not always be smooth. There will still be rocky places of frustration and meandering points of bewilderment. There will be inevitable setbacks here and there. There will be those moments when the buoyancy of hope will be transformed into the fatigue of despair. Our dreams will sometime be shattered, and our ethereal hopes blasted. We may again, with tear-drenched eyes, have to stand before the bier of some courageous civil rights worker whose life will be snuffed out by the dastardly acts of bloodthirsty mobs. But difficult and painful as it is, we must walk on in the days ahead with an audacious faith in the future. And as we continue our charted course, we may gain consolation from the words so nobly left by that great black Bart, who was also a great freedom fighter of yesterday, James Weldon Johnson. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sigh. We have come over the way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered, out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the bright gleam of our bright star is cast. Let this affirmation be our ringing cry. It will give us the courage to face the uncertainties of the future. It will give our tired feet new strength as we continue our forward stride toward the city of freedom. When our days become dreary with low hovering clouds of despair, when our nights become darker than 1,000 midnights, let us remember that there is a creative force in this universe working to pull down the gigantic mountains of evil, a power that is able to make a way out of no way and transform dark yesterdays into bright tomorrows. Let us realize that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. Let us realize that William Cullen Bryant is right. Truth crushed to earth will rise again. Let us go out realizing that the Bible is right. Be not deceived. God is not mocked. Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. This is our hope for the future. With this faith, we will be able to sing in some not too distant tomorrow with a cosmic past tense. We have overcome. We have overcome. Deep in my heart, I did believe we would overcome.
This is Winston the Homicidal Computer. And you've been listening to an excerpt from Cinephobia Radio. For the complete episode, visit the website at www.cinephobia-radio.com. So until next time, vidi well my little droogies. Vidi well.